There were proto-reformers before Luther.
Were there
guys
really?
like Wycliffe. So John Wycliffe and William Tyndale both translated the Bible, parts of the Bible, into English, and they predated. I mean, and they weren't very popular for it either. I mean, Wycliffe was declared a heretic.
I love Wes Huff as much as the next guy. I love that he basically ended Billy Carson's career. But I think in this clip specifically, he's feeding into, or maybe a victim of, this kind of delusion that the proto-reformers and the reformers, all they wanted is this Bible in their language, and the Catholic Church were just chasing them down to the ends of the earth because they were translating it. That's a distortion of history, and I think a lot of people don't know that. And I wanted to focus in on John Wycliffe for this very reason. John Wycliffe, I guarantee you, me, the rest of the Catholic Church, and the rest of the Protestant Church would consider John Wycliffe to be a heretic, a flaming heretic. But before we get into some of his heresies, I do want to say that we have a list of complaints that Pope Gregory levied against Wycliffe in order to call him a heretic, and translating the Bible was nowhere near the list, not even alluded to. I could track down a list of 24 reasons in the Pope's own words, these accusations against John Wycliffe, and I'm not going to read all of them, but I did want to bring up some very specific ones. Now, the first one I want to bring up, it's for me and my Catholic friends. He denies the Eucharist. He denies it is the body and blood of Christ. He thinks that it's impossible for the accidents of the bread and wine to remain and the substance to be gone and Christ's substance to be in place. He denies that Jesus Christ instated the Mass. By Catholic standards, that's heresy. And it's not going to get any better, but the rest of these points I'm going to be making, they're going to make John Wycliffe out to be a heretic in the eyes of literally every single other Christian on earth. For instance, John Wycliffe is accused of being a sedevacantist for teaching that there has not been an actual pope since Pope Urban VI, and he's living in the 14th century. Sedevacantists are heretics by the standards of Protestants, and they're heretics by the standards of Catholics. They're considered heretics by Protestants because they actually believe that the See of Peter, that the Pope is a legitimate position that ought to be filled, and they're considered heretics by Catholics because they believe that that seat is right now vacant and Pope Francis is not the Pope. So yeah, just on that alone, if you're a Protestant, your pastor likely would never allow John Wycliffe to ever preach in his church. Another heresy that John Wycliffe espouses is the heresy of Donatism. He thinks that bishops and priests, when they consecrate things, when they baptize, when they ordain, the sacraments are invalid if they're living in sin. That's Donatism, and that was condemned by the church as heresy as early as 314 AD. There's other weird things he teaches, like if a priest accepts alms, that he's excommunicated alongside the person who gave him the alms. He also taught that ministers, priests, they should not be allowed to own any personal property whatsoever, and that priests, instead of living off the donations of the church, should go get a real job. And this is part of a larger problem, that for a Protestant, all you need to become like a proto-reformer or a reformer is to be a rebel against the Church of Christ. You don't actually even barely have to be a Christian. You can actually openly espouse heresy, things that would be condemned both by Protestants today and Catholics throughout all of church history. That's all you have to do to be considered like a proto-Protestant or a reformer. The narrative that your pastors, your ministers, your teachers are feeding you about these reformers is a lie. And they're flaming heretics. They were then. They were excommunicated for good reason. And if they walk into your church today and listen to you preach and listen to the doctrines you hold, they would probably try to excommunicate you, and you would probably kick them out of your church.